Guys, for being minutely late. It's been a busy day. Call the meeting to order at 6:03. Everyone's.
Could you give Elizabeth just a couple minutes?
Well, she's not gonna miss much. She may get elected to something.
That was the plan.
Is she? How close is she?
She said she's about 3 minutes.
Okay. All right, we'll recess for 3 minutes. We'll wait for her.
Mark's not coming? Is Mark gonna be here, do you know, or did you say, or?
I didn't get a call from him. Did you? I haven't heard from Mark.
He mentioned to me when I dropped the budget off that.
Okay, he mentioned that he might not be here.
Yeah, he's out of state, but
Yeah, he's out of state quite a bit, so.
Casey, would you mind wrangling me a Pepsi, please?
What color is it?
Blue. Meeting. May not. Part of it is not coming. Okay, so we will elect budget committee officers. Typically, we have selected one of the citizen members to fill these roles, although that's not required or called for. Anybody can serve. So, and then note this is a public meeting. It's not necessarily a public participation meeting. We can take an occasional question from the audience. The way our process works is like any other legislative body. This is a work session for the budget committee. Then at the April board meeting, the proposed budget from this group is up for a public hearing. That's the real time for input and comments from the public. And then that gives us the chance to call the budget committee back together to make revisions for final approval if need be. When it's a small group like we have here, there's only 4 of you, we can probably deal with an occasional question. So just signal somebody. So, hey, good. All right. So, with that, is there a nomination for president?
I nominate Jim.
I'd rather have a citizen than a board member.
Oh.
So I nominate Elizabeth Cuthbert.
Second.
There you go. Who second?
I did.
Oh God, I thought I had that.
Are there any other nominations for president? Sensing none. Are there any objections? Hearing none, you're it.
Switch to my name, Elizabeth.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Okay, so now our next order of business is to nominate.
Vice president and treasurer.
Vice president. Where's that page?
Next page, next page.
It's on
There we
page
go.
two, it's weird,
It's on the
it's on the
back.
back side, yes.
Thank you. Do we have a nomination for vice president?
I nominate the other Jim.
No, that,
Second.
is that me?
That's you.
All right.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Do we have a nomination for secretary?
I nominate Andy.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Yeah, first and second. Vote to approve.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Note the cat is taking minutes, so you don't really have to do a lot.
You just have to
Good.
sign.
Ceremonial title.
Yep, great. Okay, so we have minutes, well, we have the agenda before us. That is on page 2. And then we also have those meeting dates, should we need to go past today. We would have we would have agreed upon day to reconvene.
Wednesday, Thursday, or
Okay.
I think it was in your letters that I sent out to set aside.
Yes, thank you, Dawn. Okay, do we have a motion to approve the agenda and any future dates as needed? Motion to approve. Second?
Second.
Move second. All approved? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And I'd like to turn it over to Dawn, our superintendent, to put them back to the message.
Starting on page 28 is the budget message. I'll just briefly go over it. As you well know, our primary budget is the general fund, which is broken into 2 areas. One is basic service being that service that is paid for by the taxes, and then special services being those services that are available to the community with fees and charges. Under basic service, we also have acquisition and development, as well as transfers, contingencies, also under the basic service. There is roughly 17 total departments. 6 of those are considered basic, and 11 is considered special services. So I've given you in page 28 through page 34, and also to note that page 33, there was a mistake, and I have that on your deal. The bottom numbers were not wrong. I circled what was wrong on those so that you can see it. It didn't add up. So I made those corrections so that you would have that. This year's budget, the primary thing we did different in the past, as you well know, we have put the ending balance anywhere from $1 million to $2 million. This year, we decided to put the full amount. Some people were concerned. I think the important thing to point out is, like this year, if we'd have put $1 million, we couldn't have spent, if there was $5 million left, we couldn't have spent it. by law, we can only spend what we budget. But a person talked to me, and I think I agreed with them. They said, is maybe that being somewhat as forthcoming as we should be. So this year, I went back, and I'm pretty sure that we'll have a 6 million ending balance. The reason I say that is currently our ending balance last year was about 5.9. If my calculations are correct, we'll have $0 to $200,000 at the end of this year. We could have a negative ending balance, but I don't think we will. I think it'll be very close. The reason I say that is ever since 2000, I put what we have spent every month on a spreadsheet. So I have 20-something years of spreadsheets. And what I've done now, we're already through 9 months. So I can pretty well calculate what the next 3 months are going to be. So I know what that is. So we can, if my calculations are correct, and I think they are, we'll have, like I said, anywhere from $0 to $200,000 ending balance this year to add to the 6 million. What I did was I just rounded it off because then I just put 6 million. So that's why the ending balance is so much higher.
Just to clarify, that means we're not planning on spending the 6 million this year.
Yes, because by law, when you must balance. Elizabeth knows if your expenditures are that the only way you can do that is by having what's called an unappropriated ending balance. That means that you can't spend it. I just don't think we've never had that, never done it. We've always just balanced it out. If you notice this year, the acquisition development is quite high. So we just put it under that. Now, will we be able to get to all those projects? Maybe, maybe not, but we have the ability to do it if we do. Do I think we're going to get to all those? Probably not. But that money will just bank over. And again, you cannot spend more than what you budget.
So the point of this is for transparency purposes.
That's correct.
That's all it really is.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
We've always been very conservative, as all of you know. We've been very conservative on the revenue side, a little bit more liberal on the expenditure side to make sure that we had enough. And we followed that trend again, where I don't see us running into problems with this particular budget. When you set an amount, like we talked, I had a board member ask about the general fund as far as acquisition and development. As we go through the budget cycle, we approve amount. We don't really approve the projects, but if we change those projects, we come back to the board and tell them why we're changing it, what we have to do. If you also notice, under the projects, there's a 6-year plan for the future. In other words, we have roofs that sometimes leak and don't, We budget it. If it doesn't leak, we don't fix it. We just carry it over to the next year. That's the way we've operated in the past. I think it's a good use of taxpayers' money. It makes it go longer, rather than say, you got to do that because you budgeted. No, you don't. What the law says is we cannot spend more than we budgeted. So that's the way we kind of work that. And what we try to do is I have the staff give me what they see is the next 6 years as far as what they need, or what they see that needs replaced, like trucks, tractors, mowers, all of those. So we kind of had a repair and replacement budget for many, many years, and we'll continue to do that. Other than that, I'll answer any questions anybody has.
Sorry, one more point of clarification. So we have potential projects that will equal up to that $6 million if we can complete them.
That's correct. But we may not spend over that $6 million. What we can do is come back and say, one of the projects, it was brought up last board meeting about the cultural center, the roof. We may have to do the roof. So we would just go back to the budget and say, this is what the roof is gonna cost and blah, 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 and we change that.
But stay within that $5 million.
That's correct. We, by law, we must stay within that amount.
In those situations, part of that would probably come under contingency on the roof or something.
Well, the contingency, we've always, Elizabeth talked about that. We've always kept 100,000. This year, I think it was 117 or 1,000. But we always, I cannot remember a year that we've had to use that contingency. I mean, I've been there 30-something years and we haven't used it, but we, again, I want to stretch that, or say that on the expenditure side, we've always been a little liberal, because by law, and I tell the staff this, that they need to make sure that they don't under budget, because by law, you cannot spend more than you have. Now, we can move things within areas like we'll have so much for supplies. And let's say utilities are running high, but we have a large amount in supplies. We can take that supply budget and transfer it to utilities or funds for that. But that's in the material and services. But we do that occasionally, but it's very rare. And most of the time, we don't have any problems. What's called a transfer. But again, when you approve the budget on the personnel services, we cannot spend more than what we have on the budget. We also, in the material and services, may not spend more than what's on the budget.
Well, that being the case, then I'm a little bit surprised that, after last year when we added $1 million to the payroll, because we were having a hard time either maintaining or hiring people, that there's absolutely, not only is there no increase for anybody in the payroll at all this year, when we had an 8.7% COLA in January, but you're looking like you're reducing the amount of your payroll by $118,000. So
No,
what does that do?
Okay. First of all, we did give increases. We gave increase to all the lower staff People like myself, we did not, because I haven't gotten an increase in a couple of years and don't want one, so it's not a big deal. Some of the other staff has gotten increases. Again, we met last year, we gave pretty hefty increase, very hefty. It was 20-something% to the personnel. This year, I did take all the techs and the lower ones, and I gave them a step increase. The reason, if you remember last year, we had this same argument. What occurred was, it came down to the last board meeting. We budgeted money, and this year, we're probably closer. If you go to parks, for instance, you notice the part-time budget has declined. The reason it declined is because that's all they asked for this year. Last year, because of what we talked about, I stuck in that amount because I wanted to make sure we had enough money.
But Don, when people are experiencing much higher than an 8% increase in inflation for everything, and you give no increase in a salary, they lose real wages.
I'd like to call our attention to that we do not discuss salaries. Those were at the board level and with administration. So last year, we had a lot of discussion on salaries, and I'd like to avoid that. That should have been addressed before. But I did have a question on the reduction of a lot of part-time. I don't know if it was elimination or a lot of part-time reduction of personnel costs. And so I was just wondering if you were changing the workforce, moving them to full-time, or is there just less part-time employees?
As far as the park staff goes, I can answer that. One thing that helped us reduce the amount of man hours, person hours that we need, is the purchasing of the right type of equipment that allows us to be more productive. So, for instance, if I had in the past to have 3 to 4 people using weed eaters to eliminate invasive species or on a daily basis or whatever, we now have certain mowers and apparatuses that attach to existing equipment that take the place of 3 to 4 people and man hours there. Also, we have adjusted and cross-trained our staff to, a lot of them now can work at the golf course and cross-train there in different areas to where that's helped alleviate the exact amount of hours. And then with being able to hang on to one of the biggest wins, and thanks to the board, last year by allowing us to hire and have more applicants come on the table and end up ultimately having a more experienced staff, that I've been able to develop talent and keep people to where they're now more productive. We have less turnover. So that's been huge also.
Okay.
So I feel comfortable with the amount of bottoms.
So overall, has these pay increases from last year improved? That's what I wanted to find out.
Absolutely. It was a game changer
Retention
for us.
as well as your recruitment efforts.
Yes to both of those points, 110%.
Okay, across the whole park and rec, or just?
Yes.
Well, I would mention too, for special services, that, and I mentioned this at our last board meeting, that we are able in the summer to hire teachers, which we've never really had the opportunity to do before because the wage is competitive. So we have a summer care program, and we have a pre-K program and a preschool program. In the past, we've struggled a little bit to find staff that had experience in early education. And this year, because of the wage increase, we've been able to hire teachers that are looking for a summer employment. So thank you for that. I mentioned that last time.
This budget reflects what they turned in to me. I didn't question it. I did talk to each one of them about those and ask pertinent questions, but I was satisfied with what they turned in.
The only thing that I think about is if we just let it roll and don't have those COLAs or a percentage of those COLAs down the road, we're gonna end up where we were before. That's one thing that I have to say, down the road, it's kind of like a long time we didn't do anything about the STCs, we go way behind. This is the same type of thing with personnel. The other thing that I wanted to mention was, it's like when you make the cuts in the park system, parks area, personally, and maybe this isn't a budget committee thing, but I'd like to see maybe next year's budget to have a facility manager that's up to date on HVAC units, boilers, chillers, all those things, so we don't have to wait for someone to come out and fix them. We can fix them in-house with some of this training. But that's why I saw the cut in parks. I just so anyway, that's just a thought, but that's not a budget committee discussion.
Jim,
Sorry.
there is no way to fix those in-house.
I'm looking at preventative maintenance, so we don't have to come up
Well,
with a problem.
preventive maintenance doesn't require that. Preventive maintenance is already being done.
Okay, we'll agree to disagree. That's
Well,
okay. Move ahead.
Well,
Maybe when you were there, it wasn't done, but it is being done now. So I want to make that clear.
Okay, I think at this time, Dawn has presented the budget message. We've had some good clarifying questions on that. On the agenda, we have now our public input opportunity, and then following that, then we can go into deeper dives of questions of the budget as it's broken down.
And I should just make clear, my previous comments about public questions were once we get into the nuts and bolts of things. We do have this section for
Yeah.
general.
So, but that was an opportunity to hear our superintendent's overall putting together of our budget that we are reviewing, his proposed budget. Thank you, Don, for that. And so now, I open it to public comment. So anyone that would like to speak, let's have you come up here. We have, let's say, 5 minutes per person, and I can get my phone out and start a clock, and we can look at. Please step up. Do we have anyone on record or not on record that would like to speak? Going once? Going twice? All right, well, thank you all for being here. We will continue. We will continue with the agenda. So number 4 is overview of funds. There's a couple of different ways we can do this. We can shout out our questions. We can go through A, B, and C. We can go round robin around the table. Does anybody have a proposal how we'd like to proceed in this next section of review?
Well, for my 2 cents, it's more efficient to just go through A, B, C, and D that one.
Okay,
But that's only 1 to 10.
okay, and we can, it's our meeting, so if we want to back up, we can do that too. So, thank you, Don. So we'll start with any questions on the general fund, and I'll do a kickoff if you don't mind. Thank you, Don, for talking about the beginning fund balance starting at 6 million. I think that is very transparent, and it does put it into the budget. And I noticed that we put the 4.2 million, I believe it was, into capital outlay, capital acquisitions. And then looking at, so 2 questions. One, if we don't think we're going to spend it all, sometimes it's better to put in a contingency. So, because then you have trends of budgets to actuals, because you said we don't get to everything. And the other is, I would like to see the contingency increased a bit. 117 really doesn't match with the size of the budget. And if we don't spend all those dollars, then we're just, in my thought, like when we're just adding money to budget lines that we know aren't realistic. And then it would lead the reader to say, oh, we have all these optimistic plans. And then to Jim's point, it's like, well, if something does happen, do we go to contingency? But we know an Oregon budget law allows us to move dollars around. So we would just use unspent dollars. So my question to you is, what do you think about increasing the contingency to keep those dollars in play to be available, and then to make the capital outlay maybe more realistic, what really occurs year to year.
I don't see the need to increase the contingency simply because 30-some years we haven't used what we did. We used to have a major maintenance budget that we did away with. We still show it in the deal, but we haven't used it for many, many years. The reason they did that is they said, well, what if the pool boilers or something goes down? We have more than enough in our acquisition and development. If something like that occurs, we can come back. The only time we would need to call the budget committee back together is if we were going to spend over what was approved. I think what we tried to do is show what we're trying to do, where we're trying to go with the projects. Now, the projects, some of those projects may take 2 years, but if we don't spend the money, it'll be in the ending balance next year. So that shouldn't be a problem. But it does give us the flexibility this year that if we can get to it, we get through it, then let's do it. I'd rather, it's not going to go down in price, that's for sure.
Right.
So are you thinking that if we were to take more of the ending balance and put it into the contingency, that it's just easier to transfer out if we needed to, instead of having it budgeted in different departments? I guess I'm not going, if you can move funds around if you needed to, what would be the disadvantage or the advantage of having it sitting in contingency? I mean, it doesn't really make that much difference to me. I'm just trying to follow the logic here.
So budgets
And
are.
before you answer that, let me tag on. You do this professionally, budgets and stuff. So you mentioned that you felt that the contingency wasn't large enough relative to the budget. So as you're answering Mike's question, I would also like to know what a figure is you think would be more appropriate.
Sure. So about 3 to 6 months operating is what operating, not reserves or capital projects. That's typically what you would put into your reserves or into your contingency. Because if the revenue stopped with the fees, of course, we had property tax, but if something happened, we couldn't collect the property tax, so there was no cash inflow, you could still pay the staff to continue working and have progress during that time until the taxes were collected or fees were resumed. So 3 months to 6 months is recommended. Now the question, why pull it out of operating, is because your budget is also a plan. And if we're inflating, I want to be careful the word I choose, but a line that we know there's no way we're going to be able to do that, then if I look at my budget year to year, or look at my budget to actual, where's the story there? Because you always want to budget what you really think is going to happen. The contingency is for like, oh my goodness, there's a hole in the pool. We didn't plan that. We don't have, just extra cushion in all these lines for that. We have a story to say, we need to pull the money out of contingency, move it up into operating for that repair. So that's the story. And so to me, every year is like, you want your budget and actual to be close. And it's just a budgeting process, that your staff deals with. You guys don't see it all the time, but when you run reports, you want to be able to say, okay, well, I'm, 30% into my budget, but it's 6 months into the year. Something's wrong with that, or I'm 90% of my budget into my budget, and I'm only in the third month. So you use your budget as a tool for guiding your decisions for your operations. And if you don't have budgets really tied to your actuals, what every year is a learning opportunity, then the budgets, then you seriously make a budget and then you shelve it, because then you're just living cash to cash month to month.
Is three?
Yeah, I don't see a problem with the contingency as Don lays it out. I mean, I remember when the contingency was like $25,000, so I
I
think
wasn't on the
that.
budget committee then.
So we had trucks for 40 years, but the situation is if we do run into something like that, like, we just pull it out of there, I think we're okay.
There's no penalty, there's no, I mean, using
Could I-
contingency is totally fine.
Right.
Could I add something? Many years ago, when we got here, you're correct, tax turnover doesn't come to November, so you must operate July, August, September, October. We would borrow money every year. We borrowed money and we had to pay the interest. We set out to stop that process because, to be honest, they didn't want to pay the interest. We set up a situation, we looked at our operations, we said, how can we do this? And one of the things, you can go back and look, when the golf course in 2004 came on board, when is our highest revenue for the golf course? June, July, August, September, October. That meant that we no longer had to borrow money because we were bringing in enough revenue by which to cover that. And that was designed when we thought about building the golf course. And our expenditure today, not then, but our expenditure today is about $500,000 a month, roughly. So if you're looking at 2 million, that, and I know cities do that. We're a little bit different in that we can cover that with our revenue.
You have the cash
So,
flow.
right, we have the cash flow, so we don't have to worry about that. So I feel very comfortable with what is budgeted and the amount. Could we do it? Yes. Where would that come from? We'd just reduce the projects and put the 2 million there, but I'd rather keep it in the projects in case we can get to it and get it done. But that's just a preference for me.
You gave me the gavel, so I get to ask the question. Yes.
I want to chime in and I guess reiterate or support what Elizabeth is saying. And just so you know, I was the individual that went to the superintendent and asked that we change our budgeting process. And at that time, I asked him to do, as he has done, pull forward the estimated ending balance for our beginning balance this year. But at that time, I also asked him what Elizabeth is suggesting, that we increase our reserves, possibly reserves, unallocated reserves, and certainly our contingency for a variety of reasons. Mostly it's a matter of transparency and leaving that breadcrumb trail of what happened throughout the financial year so that those that follow after us can see clearly what happened. Because the way we do it now, it's obscured. It's a little hard to know what money flows from where to where. And it's important to recognize that what she's proposing are proven, accepted accounting principles that are used universally in the state of Oregon by everyone. And if you look at the way, as an example, the city of Newburgh handles their budget, they do as Elizabeth is proposing. And if you look at the county where she is the director of finance, that's the way they do theirs as well. These are the accepted methodologies. And I will also say that it's not going to sound good, but I'm saying it respectfully. The reason we have never had to use our contingency budget is for the very reason we're talking about. There's so much, I'll say, again, it's a bad word, people don't like, padding in our budget. There's so much float in our budget that it's easy to just move things around. And that's why we've never had to dip into our contingency, because almost everything, so many of our budget items, in a sense, are hidden contingencies because we don't really expect to buy them or spend that money. And and we didn't, and so we moved it somewhere else. So respectfully, I suggest that we listen to probably the most experienced budgetary person on our committee here and consider that seriously.
He's been on the board for 109 years.
Yes, but he's not the director of finance for Clackamas County. But he is the director of finance for Farmers Insurance.
And we've never gone in the black. No, I'm just kidding. Never gone in the red either, no.
So anyway, and later on in the discussion, I think maybe there'll be other items where it's easy to demonstrate how maybe some of the money in that item, perhaps we should consider as monies that could be pulled forward and put into that contingency fund.
Yeah, I kind of like the suggestions that you're making, Elizabeth, as far as being able to track it. We never did that before, but I didn't have any reason to question it. I don't have any reason to question it now. It's just, I'm looking at it differently. And I think in an era where we need to be as transparent and able to track things as possible, I think it's maybe a wise thing for us to consider doing this, setting it up this way and putting money, getting the different departments closer to what actually will be spent, putting the extra money in contingency and then float it out. And then you got a trail. So I would agree with that.
Yeah, Tom.
So I heard what you said. I'm not really ready to fall on my sword either way. I will say that, you said 3 to 6 months as a guideline. I don't see any reason why we would need to do more than 3. We're a government agency. People aren't going to all stop coming to the pool in the same day. We're not going to not be able to collect taxes. So it's like, we're not going to have that nuclear winter thing where all of a sudden all the revenue goes away. But in line with what you're saying, I would support 3 months with whatever that number is.
Sounds like it'd be 100 or 1.5 million.
It's 1.5 million would be.
Any other discussion on that? We don't have to make a decision at this time, but it's on the table. Any other discussions on that or on the general fund?
Let me take a look at this for a second. Possible. Yeah, I probably do.
Go ahead.
But I know you'll stop me if I've got this wrong. But I see in the general fund, under expenditures,
What page are you on, please?
I'm looking at page 35,
Page 35.
fund summary. There?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so anyway, looking down under expenditures, under development, improvement, and acquisition, there's the big kahuna there, $5.181 million.
That's contingency loan adjustments.
No, actually, I think it's not. I think contingency and loan adjustments is 117,000.
It's development, improvement, and acquisition.
It's hard to read across.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the details for that, I think you'll find on page 128.
Correct.
That's sort of this is a roll up, looking at 128.
Can I pause you for a moment?
Yes, of course.
Kat, on page 35, going back to that, we have right under the words fund summary, that's estimated fiscal year 21-22, but we should have actuals.
So you need to address that to the superintendent who wrote the
Why?
budget. I am not
Oh,
involved in this.
sorry. On page 35, we have actuals of fiscal year 2021, and then we have estimated 21-22, and then budget 22-23. I think we should have estimated 22, 23, and
Okay.
actuals.
The actual is audited. We have not gotten an audit yet for that year. But what we have given you is what we have on record.
Got it.
Heidi,
Who's the auditor? Polly Rogers. Oh,
yeah,
they were out and completed their field work back in September. Then we had done our mid audit. That gentleman that came out was not with the company anymore when they came out in September, and they had to go back and redo all the work. Then they got pulled off of our account to meet deadlines for the school districts. They have had a lot of illnesses. They are very short-staffed.
No.
It is a very, it's a skilled profession, and there's not a lot of them
shortage.
out there right now. And so where I'm in communication with them almost on a weekly basis, and they're, very sorry, we got to pull on your account for about an hour today, and then we got drug off to an emergency or someone's out again, so.
with the estimated, what I didn't want to do is mislead anybody. Do you think the total budget of the 8 million will change more than $1,000?
It's not gonna be, I mean, let's say bad case scenario, 5 out of the whole budget, but it's gonna be really.
I was just wondering
it's
about
close. Right,
Okay.
but we don't have it, and I didn't want to misrepresent that.
What about I'm sorry, on the same line of thinking under 22, 23, it shouldn't say budget, it should say estimated still though, right? For
Well-
22, 23, because that's what we're in right now.
That looks like that's the budgeted numbers. We would want estimates, and I think those are in the detail pages,
Right.
but not on the summary pages. Because I did notice that we do have, and thank you so much, you have, like, for instance, on page 42, we have budgeted 22, 23 actuals year-to-date and estimated year-end. So we do have those available in the detail.
Right. That was a request of the budget committee to do it that way. A lot of budgets don't do it that way. They just put the budgeted amount. It was asked to go one step farther, which we've done, and to try to estimate what the ending would be. So we've done that.
And that helps you,
Right.
tie how we're going to end the year to your budget.
Correct.
Okay, page 128, Jim, you're on.
Okay. So this kind of ties in perhaps with the proposal to increase our contingency fund, because I think there's some expenditures in here that possibly are, we'll say, good candidates to move some of that money into that contingency fund. But I also had some general questions, and I think I'll work around to it. For instance, let's look at and talk about the Rene Field, which is down near the bottom on the new development.
Right.
So there's $1.5 million there that's looking like it's general fund dollars. And I saw also in the recent minutes, the contract that I guess there's a contract being negotiated between CPRD and the Newburgh School District. And I wonder if you could tell us about that and how that's structured and how that relates to this $1.5 million.
It's not a contract. What it is it's an agreement, an intergovernmental agreement between our board and the school board. We're trying to use the school district property to develop the Rainy Fields. In the discussion, for instance, where we are now, is that originally we sent them an agreement that said for the next 100 years or 99 years, that would be our property to use. They came back with a counteroffer of 10 years. The board at a meeting decided the least they would accept would be 50. So we called up the superintendent and I told him what the board had said. They met their board and it's going to be 50 years. That's to do the fiduciary responsibility of the money that we spend. So that 1.5 will be to redo those fields and put turf fields there. And in that agreement, there was a legislature gave us, or gave the school district, 750,000. That 750,000 will be transferred to us. So we will report that 750,000. So we'll be receiving that. When we did the budget, we didn't know when we were going to receive it or if we were going to receive. We still don't. But through the negotiation, most likely, we may receive that 750,000 before the end of the year.
This
We
year?
may. Yes, we may.
We're talking
Before
Accounting.
July, before June 30th.
of this year.
That's correct. We may, but that's not guaranteed. We may also receive it next year at some point in this year's budget.
The budget we're talking about, yes.
That's correct. But that money will be like all money. It'll go in and be reported. So we could increase on the budget side, the 750,000 under grants, and which is where we would put it, and that would give us 800,000 with the 117. That could also be done, and I think that would probably work. Then we could go to trails and probably do the rest under trails. I'd keep Rennie Field at the 1.5.
So the school district is going to give us, in essence, $750,000, which that's, if and when that happens, would in essence look like revenue income to us.
That's correct.
And I'm processing this here because this is new information for me. So what do we think that Rennie Field is actually going to cost to develop as it's envisioned, as it's being envisioned right now?
1.5 plus.
So $1.5 million or possibly more, right? Right. Do we have, is there a plan for it yet? Have we gone out for RFP or anything like that?
Yes, we have, and that whole process got stopped during the school district superintendent turnover last year. And so we wanted to restart it back in December and reach out. Got on top of the agreement with Dr. Phillips, and we're just about done the agreement, so.
So that's the agreement, but is there actually a,
Drawing?
we'll call it an architectural
There's a drawing.
site drawing that we can go out and get quotes for so we know?
We're doing it under, what's it called? Partnership, cooperative co-op.
Correct.
And it's administered by the Eastern Oregon School Board members. It's legit. And they have contracts with certain engineering firms, certain installation firms, certain suppliers firms, and you can put them all together and something.
So this is to put in new turf, new track. Is there a pickleball court in there?
There is.
Sorry, I couldn't help
There's
myself.
money on there, and we've talked to the school district about that. So yes,
There's 400,000.
So, given where we are now, we haven't yet signed a contract, but, well, an agreement, an intergovernmental agreement, but you think it's close. Then they'll transfer money to us. Then we'll start that process, which will involve, I imagine, permitting through the city.
Yeah, they've already had some preliminary meetings with the city, but very preliminary. That was back last year in, let's say, in the April, May. And that's kind of where it stopped.
Does this doesn't sound to me like something that we would, when I think of how governments work, which is often pretty slow, and contractors and all that stuff, it doesn't sound like, to me, like something that we would likely finish by this time next year.
Well, we put a date on it of June of 2024, but there is no time limit on the grant. And if it goes longer, and it just says about, it doesn't say by the end of June, or shortly thereafter is what it says.
So, I could be wrong on this, but I'll be very, very surprised if we have a refurbished, brand new Rene Field this time next year. There'd be nothing wrong with that, though. But also, the money that's being budgeted right now is our current budget. We'll call it our current bank account without the benefit of the additional $750,000 that we're going to get from school district, which would suggest to me that if we're going to get 750 from them, and it's a $1.5 million project, then we don't need $1.5 million of, we'll say, our current bank account in this budget, and that would be money that could be moved forward to the contingency fund.
We will need it.
Still have to.
We still have to spend the 1.5 million.
To get the 750.
That's correct.
It's a matching grant.
Right. Well, it's not a matching grant. The school district has it. It came from the legislature. So it was appropriated through the legislature. One of our concerns, like with ARPA funds, as you all know, you have to spend it by a certain time. With these particular funds, because of the legislature, it does not have a time guideline. But as you all know, with the legislature, if you give them money, you want to spend it as fast as you can.
Spend it first.
Right, spend it first.
But to continue on with that, and I'm sorry to harp on this, I'm looking for ways to looking for money that's realistically probably not necessarily going to be spent, that could be put in that contingency. So if we're going to do it, if we're going to increase the contingency fund, we got to get that money from somewhere. And when I look at this, well, I fully support, and I'm excited that Rene Field is going to get this redevelopment. It doesn't seem to me like that we need $1.5 million in this budget right now, because it is a matching fund thing. We've agreed that we're going to give them, I read the contract, well, the agreement, and the agreement said we're going to match funds to the amount of $750,000 with their $750,000 for a total of 1.5.
So that realistically, that 1.5 should be split between grants and other funds, and we're probably going to use SBC funds on that.
So let me interject here. So I think what we need to do is allow the superintendent with the board work on the projects, but I think we have a dollar amount that we can back out from projects overall and move into contingency, if that's what we choose to do.
That was,
so I think
that was the essence of what I was trying to get out there. Maybe I didn't make it clear
right.
enough.
So that's would be the project fund, but I think we want to leave the details of the project to the operations. So we'll let.
Yeah, I was only trying to ascertain whether or not there was a likelihood that we would actually spend that money this year.
There's a good possibility.
My recommendation would be simply, because of the way things are going, we will probably do Rene Field before we do the trails because of the time element.
Yeah, I would say that, but there's
But you know what, we have a dollar amount in the budget, proposed budget for projects. And we know we're not gonna spend 5.1, so we have some available dollars there if we choose to move some of those down into contingency without picking the projects apart at this time. You know, I think we wanna make sure we stay up above the water line.
If you move it from this general fund line item, or from just whatever these projects, and into a contingency, and the projects end up spending 5.1, can you pull it back out of the contingency for that? So
Absolutely.
it's just sitting somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's for the same, it's not like we're gonna be limited to 4 point whatever. No.
Right, but what we've heard is that typically we don't spend all
Right,
that.
exactly.
But
No,
it's
I was just-
there.
It was just technical.
Can I
There's
make
one
a
other question.
suggestion?
Let me have Andrew real quick.
Casey, just as it relates to the RFP, you talked about it being a cooperative effort. How's the evaluation actually done and who ultimately makes the decision?
The school district and the park district together.
Okay, so the two together, okay.
True co-op.
Could I make this suggestion? I know that we're gonna get the 750,000. Listening to what's been said, if we approve this year's budget, next year, I'll make sure that we have a contingency of 1.5 million.
That's on the table. So when we get to the very end, we'll let you know what the board, the
All right.
committee decides. If they want to do it in this fiscal year or postpone it.
All
Can I
right.
ask a question? What's the advantage of postponing it?
The only advantage for postponement, we're really doing the same thing. We're just taking the 1.5 from the projects and putting it under contingency so that we can take it from contingency and put it right back into the
But
deal.
But history shows we don't spend all of our projects, and that's what we were trying to
Well,
true up or clean up.
That may be true, but I mean, the results will basically be the same. It's more cosmetic than anything. I just didn't, like I said, we have never spent 100,000 out of contingency. So to put 1.5 there, I can assure you we're not going to spend it. It's just useless, but that's okay. If that's what the budget committee wants, we can do that. I realize other governments do it, but in reality, what we've tried to do is tell you where we would spend the money if it was there. With the contingency, it's really left up to a later date. So this way, in my opinion, we're being more forthright than the other way with the larger contingency. I realize the reason for a contingency is because of the borrowed money. But in our system, we've developed so we don't have to do that. We deliberately did that. Now, I realize cities and others, the county, may not be able to do that. But we can, and we have.
Okay, so
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah.
I think that this is a relatively recent phenomena, and it's since we increased the SDCs. And so since that time, if you look at the history of this, since 2017 or so, when the SDCs started to go up, we started to have more funds in the general fund. And I believe this is just an accumulation of funds over time that we didn't have previously, and so the budgeting is not keeping up in terms of the expenditures with the amount of revenue that's coming in. This is a good problem to have. But I think that is part of the core to why there's $5.1 million in these projects now. If we could do it, they'd probably get them, but chances are there's not staff here sufficient to do all of that work. So it's where you just want that money to sit. Do you want to sit it in projects, or do you want to sit it in contingency, or a combination of the two? I think it's half a dozen or one or the other, but I think that's why there is all, we haven't seen this prior. When I first got on, we didn't have this kind of money.
I think some of that is because we never budgeted beginning balance. That's why you never saw it. And that's what we're trying to be more transparent in this budget, is to recognize the true ending balance at the end of the fiscal year, and then recognize it in the beginning balance. Before, it was not shown as a beginning fund balance. So I'll just say one more, I think Mike got it. The reason I'm proposing this at all is because you want your budgets to be what you plan to really happen. So then your finance reports tell you something. And if you don't have a budget that you're really targeting, your finance reports won't give you a direction of how much you spent and how much you underspent. But let's table that. I think we've killed that with 1,000 questions and points. I think we all get it. So it's up to the budget committee if you want to do that. I have it written down. We'll save it for the end of discussion. Let's move to the next one if we're done with the general fund. But Dawn, did you get your question on general fund answered? Okay. Anybody else in general fund?
Is page, hang on, I might be past this. Is page 34 our general fund? Or is that on to the next one?
Oh, let's see. 34?
That's under summary?
Loan is under D, it looks like 34.
It's under budget and this.
Are you,
Page 34 is the budget list.
go ahead, ask your question.
Loan service fund, item number 3, purchase of property, loan ends 2021 through 2022. Yet we're still showing it as a debt. Is that loan over, or do we still have payments on it?
No. The loan service fund was set up because what we did with the loan service fund is we transferred money from the general fund to the loan service fund to pay the loans. What we said was a couple of years ago that we would no longer pay the debt out of the general fund. We'd pay the debt out of the SDC fund. So we didn't transfer that. Where the 34,000 came in was money that was left there from the transfers. So we just kept that there and kept the fund. We haven't done away with the fund yet, and we just kept that money in there.
It's just a balance.
It's a balance.
Right,
Yeah,
it's
just
a balance.
There's activity occurring, and that's just the balance.
That's correct.
Probably a service charge on
Clear as mud?
There's none, exactly.
Okay. Jim?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask on our health insurance, how much did that increase this year, and what do you see in that? Is that a big increase this year, or stay about the same, or I see some increases there? You feel comfortable with health insurance?
Yeah.
It always worries me,
What
health insurance.
was
anymore.
the increase? It was about, we budgeted about 10%.
Approximately 10%. So
Yeah.
they gave us the worst case scenario numbers, and
Right.
the hard numbers are supposed to be released, I believe, the end of this month. We got lucky. Last year, we had a 0% increase.
That's real lucky.
So I think we're gonna end up closer to, when you combine the health and the dental, probably closer to an 8%. But we definitely wanted to go with the worst case scenario,
I
whereas,
think we budgeted 10%, Jim. As you all know, we want to make sure we have enough funds there because we can't go over that. Also, you're talking about increases. Most cities, as well as counties, charge their employees for health care. We don't. We pay the whole thing. We've always done it, as you well know. And that-
I just worry sometimes these guys just keep up in it.
Well, they do.
I didn't know how much they have to this year.
Yeah.
That's why I asked the question.
Okay, moving on. We kind of talked about equipment, major maintenance fund a little bit, projects. Anybody? Can we talk about? Yes, Jim.
Are we still under general?
I was moving on.
Okay, where are we on now?
Equipment and major maintenance fund. Jim?
I did just have a question. I was wondering, whatever happened to the, what is it called? The Aquatic Odyssey or the Water Odyssey? It was a $45,000 item in last year's budget. I was wondering if we bought it or not.
I can remember that, and I talked to him about that, being
Water,
experienced in that, and that it was
Aquatic
just
Odyssey, that was it.
too much staff time to put that thing in and out, in and out. It was a floating type obstacle, big obstacle course, and the pool was used so much already, it just didn't make sense.
Okay. Sorry.
Sorry, Lance.
That's all right.
Okay, System Development Fund, SDCs. That's where our debt is moved to and
That's
paid out
correct.
of for the renovation of the pool. Right? Another page number.
For the system development fund, I missed it.
What page are we looking at?
I didn't, what page?
Is it 33?
Anybody got a page? Well, 33 is the summary.
Yeah.
Where would we find the detail on?
36.
Page 36.
That's again, that's a fund summary. Do we have another, where's our detail on that?
If we go to page 128, it's got the SBC fund, the 4715319.
So that's the detail of the expenditure.
That's correct. On page 128 is the detail of the expenditures. And remember, this fund may not be used for anything other than increase of service. It's a very unique type fund. You may not use the revenue someplace else. We can't transfer the revenue and hire people. It can only be used for expanded services.
I have a question on page 128. I didn't know we had a fire truck.
It's in this pool.
Oh,
And
okay,
it's probably calf deep for you.
yeah, okay. I thought, geez, we got a fire truck sitting out someplace?
So I have a question on the SDCs. On page 128, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 projects. The 1.2 million for planning and miscellaneous, about 1.3. Is that miscellaneous including the 790,000 debt? Because the total budget is the 4.715319, which includes 790,000 for the loan service.
Yeah, the
Transfer.
loan service is right at
Oh, it's
790,000, right?
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
Does our SDC budget assume any increases in SDC in the next voting cycle, or is this just what the numbers are as they are?
The board passed the resolution, as Jim said earlier, we got into trouble. The board decided that they would raise the SDCs according to the construction index out of Seattle. It's recognized. So every year it goes up depending on what that construction index cost is.
And it's, I think it's estimated, he's estimating how many SDCs he'll get from whatever gets built in the next year. So based on whatever, I don't know how they're doing their projections, but the SDC amount in here that he's raising is based on what they think is gonna be built in, or start construction or whatever in 2020, well, the end of this year and the beginning of next.
24.
We make a projection on the SDCs. We have no way of knowing. It can vary from year to year. And
In June, we will vote on raising the SDCs. Is that an annual thing?
no, you don't vote on it. It's done automatically. The board passed the resolution, and they said that they would raise each year according to the index.
Which is running about 11% this year.
Don, question, did they change the SCCs to where, basically it's supposed to be new construction? Are they allowing now a difference with replacement?
No, we may not use it for replacement.
Because that's what I was gonna just ask real quick, and I'm not sure why, but like Spring Meadow Playground and Path, Lake Playground and
If
Path.
they do any new improvements.
Right.
So those are gonna be new, not replacing?
Some of it's going to be new, some of it's going to be replacing.
Okay, it's just
So
not,
if they build another path in there from that development, and it goes through and connects to our old path, the portion of it that's new can be from SDCs.
yeah, I just wanna make sure that that was what you're saying. And just for people's understanding of the STCs from what we've done, a lot of our parks and playgrounds would not be built if we didn't have those STCs at all. And so, when I was as a parks supervisor, I don't know, I built 8 parks. Almost every playground in this district is out of STCs because the neighborhoods where we collect those STCs asked for parks. And if we didn't have those funds to help build those parks, we couldn't do it out of our general taxing situation. So that's why you see a lot of the playgrounds that we have. But with that said, if I was to, or Casey was to replace the playground at Spring Meadow, replace it, we couldn't use STCs. But if, let's say we have another park, we can build the park, we can build the playground and use STCs to do that. Otherwise, parks now are millions of dollars a bit, and that really helps us. So just for educational purposes, that's kind of how we do it.
It's all new, yeah.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, our next,
I have
oh, go
one
ahead.
question, just because you're talking about SDCs and parks. Maybe this is already answered and I was asleep at the switch. Can SDCs be used at all on the Rene Field project?
Yes.
Yes,
They could.
yes.
So if we needed to reach out and grab a few extra bucks over the 1.5 million, it could conceivably come from SDC.
That's correct.
Yep.
It can be a combination, or it can all be SDCs because it's new development.
But is it though? You're replacing an existing field with a fake one. You're not, I mean, and you're replacing a track that's failed with a new one. So to me, that's not new, that's a
Well,
replacement.
You could be correct. There could be a challenge there, but I believe that we would be okay, but I didn't put it there anyway.
Yeah.
I put it up under the general fund because I didn't want a challenge.
But you could take a restroom, put a
Right.
restroom in, which would be new.
Sure.
And then you're there.
Yeah,
Well,
which is,
SDC.
It
yeah,
depends on
that portion
But
of
the
the
rest-
expense.
definition of.
Could be
Not the
done,
rest
yeah.
of it, though.
And restrooms are expensive.
Yes.
They are.
Good for us. It's an abandoned school district field.
Right, it's a school district field.
It's still the school district's field though.
Yeah, so it's new to us.
But we won't own it. They'll still
They'll still own
own it.
it.
That's the reason I basically put it in the general fund. For that reason, I think it's better to be safe than sorry. But I believe legally we could make that case and probably win, but will I go to court?
Why does the school district hold on to that? Why don't they?
There is
Give
plans
it to
in the next 10 years to
Yeah.
develop a middle school there.
I think the neighborhood would just not like that idea. Yeah, because it's the playground.
Talk to her, she lives there.
Well, so do I.
What are you talking about? The,
Rennie Field.
yeah.
I wouldn't want to put a middle school there.
That's where I went to middle school.
I know. It's
I
when
went
they're,
to,
when they're.
I went to junior high there, I like it.
I know that.
Okay.
I realize that.
But anything else, I mean, if you put a pickleball there at Rennie, or anything else that you would develop, that could all be used out of STCs because it's all brand new.
That's correct.
Like a concession stand or
Yeah.
Sure.
restroom facilities, and which are pretty darn expensive to build. So, okay, it's just good to know.
But you know, if you're gonna go in there and change that field is, I mean, we don't own it. The school district owns it. It's been a field that hasn't really been used. And if you change it,
It gets used all,
I mean, it's not
used.
used as a football field, it's
Play
used
rugby,
as soccer and
soccer,
stuff like that.
football,
Right.
play
Fashion
everything.
They would get used.
Oh, yeah,
People
Old
still
Fashioned
use it.
Festival, they use it.
It's used,
So-
matter of fact, Dr. Phillips and I met yesterday that we were talking over Zoom, and they went over to McMinnville and they looked at their development and they said, he wrote back, whatever we do, just double it and do twice as much because you wish you had a. And of course, we're a little bit different than that because really, and I explained it to him, he said, well, why wouldn't we do that? And I said, because we have the high school field, which is turf. We have the college field, which is turf. We have the field at Crater, which is turf. And now we'll have the turf field here. Very few communities our size, even though two of those fields are the college. We've had great working relationships with the college in the past, and hopefully will continue. We've used those and hope to continue to use those for tournaments and those type things.
Thank you, Don. Okay, we already talked a little bit about the loan service fund. It's kind of an in and out, and it's a balance that collects interest. We're budgeting about 300,000 in interest in this next year. I'm looking at page 34 at the top. Our next fund is our bond debt fund. And so this is also looking at page 34. I had a question like that. Taxes come in there and we pay out the bond, the bond collection.
That's correct. We have to have $1,371,725 to the bond. That's what we put on the resolution. That's what we send to the county. They do the calculations to give us that amount. We don't do that. We know that the collection rate, for instance, the collection rate is only about 96%. So would need more money than that, but they take care of all that and do all that, what you want to know. So that's the way we handle that.
That was voted on by the voters. Any questions on that? All right, well, looks like we have a second opportunity for public input on the budget. Again, we'll have an opportunity for folks to speak on the information they've heard, ask questions. Limit 5 minutes per person. Please come forward, state your name, going once, going twice, going 3 times. Okay, thank you. All right, so before we go to 8, which is approval of proposed budget and tax rate, we do have a proposal on the table. I haven't heard any others, so I'll pause. Is there any other proposals for a change to the presented budget? So the one we have on the table is to include a contingency of 1.5 million, which is approximately 3 months of operating. And then to offset our capital outlay expenditure in the general fund by that equal amount, $1.5 million. This would provide budget to actual in our capital outlay. If we don't do this, we can then just, if we need funds, the dollars are already in the budget appropriated, and they would just be transferred. You've heard my recommendation, so I won't repeat it. But are there any questions or other options or suggestions?
I have a question. I'm not sure I understood everything you said exactly.
It kind of went fast.
Yeah. I think the result would be the 5.1 million would be reduced by 1.5 million, and that 1.5 million would be put into the contingency. So the overall budget at the bottom line, there'd be no change.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll finish this one and then I may put something else forward, so.
Okay.
I'll go on the record in favor.
So, yes, do we have a second for that? We'll take this one.
Was that a motion? Was there actually a
Make a
motion?
motion.
Like, I make a motion to accept the proposal.
Thank you for that. Sorry, I got what you're saying.
Okay.
And you seconded?
Mike seconded it.
Oh.
He beat me by a millisecond.
Okay, so we have a first and second to increase the contingency from 117,000 to 1.5 million, and to reduce the capital outlay by the 1.5 million. Actually, so it'd be a little less than the 117. So we need a calculator, Jim. I'll put you in charge of that one.
Oh man, that's late in the day for me.
Any other discussion on this? Okay, all those in favor say aye, or maybe we're gonna have to raise our hands. Raise your hand if you're in favor.
Aye.
Okay, that passed unanimously, thank you. We'll work on digits here. And we have something, let's hold on one second. Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna go back to, and I know we're not talking, I mean, I just think that for purposes of operations for the organization, from what I understood you to say, Dawn, on under the personnel services, that is one line item you cannot change, you can't take, if you didn't spend it in capital outlays, if it's in general fund, you can't put it in personal services, right?
And I can
So-
share why, if you look at your budget document on page 5, we'll be appropriating or approving, because the board will adopt, but we're approving by each of those lines. So personnel services, material services, the contingency, the transfer to loan to 0, the capital and acquisition. So each of those lines we are approving separately. If it had just said fund total of 14.2 million, then all that could be all lumped into one pot.
An example, we approved the budget, which has under personnel 5,074,100. If you decide, or we decide later, we may increase that up to 10%. But if we increase it over that, we have to call the budget committee back together and go through the long process. So you have some flexibility.
So and also to add to what Don's saying is, if it's under 10%, they could actually move from the capital line, the 5.1 million, and move, say if they needed $100,000, they could move it from there up into personnel with the board's approval. They would still have to come to the board, but they wouldn't call the budget committee back.
Okay. Thank you.
And if it's over 10%, then you also need a public hearing.
Right. I'm good.
Okay. All right. So we've got 3 approvals in number 8. Oh, anything else? Anybody?
I was looking at, is there anything planned?
What page?
Well, I was looking at 128. And I was trying to figure out if there's anything planned for the Wiley. I like that they have something budgeted for the Saunders Park, but do we have a plan together at all for what's going to be happening with the Wiley property?
We're doing that now, Mike. We're doing a master plan for that in this year.
Okay.
So next year we'll be addressing it.
And on the Saunders Estate Park, how close is the board or you guys deciding on actually developing that? Is that realistically?
It's out to, we applied for a land conservation grant, and it's in the works, so that's a federal grant. There's a lot of, we applied for a state grant, we didn't get that, so they came back and they gave us some money from what was left in the state fund, and then they're helping us apply for a federal grant. And that's in the process.
How much is that federal grant?
I want to say it's like between the state and the feds, it's about $625,000.
Is it a matching grant or just a grant?
We're gonna have to, we're gonna have to match 40% or something.
Okay.
So just a clarification. So, you're talking about 750,000 that's gonna come from the school district potentially next year, but it could go into the following year. You're talking about this grant that.
All these things can.
So when that money comes in, are you still limited to the expenditures that you have here?
Yeah.
So that's just extra money.
That's correct.
All right.
You're limited. You may not spend more than the budget committee approves.
And then the board adopts.
And then we're- yeah.
Okay, so Mike, are you good?
Yes, I'm good.
All right, so we'll do first things first, which is A, under A is approval of resolution of approving levying taxes for fiscal year 2023-24. So on page 3, we have total debt service of $1,371,725 for from taxes at 0.9076 cents per thousand of assessed value. Do I have a motion to approve this tax rate? Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Yes. Okay, your second one is approval of resolution on approving the budget for fiscal year 2023-24 on page 4. This is for the total amount of $20,356,596 today at our budget meeting, April 4th, 2023. And be it resolved that the budget officer publishes the approved budget as prescribed in state statutes. Do we have a motion to approve the total budget? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
It's hard to approve that kind of money.
Okay, so here is our appropriation approval on page 5.
If I may,
Yes.
under operating contingency, put $1.5 million. Under capital development improvement and acquisition, put 4799356. And that will equal.
Not what I got.
What'd you get?
Well, if we make the operating contingencies, as you suggested, $1.5 million, and we're pulling it from the existing 5181, we only have to bring up $1,382,098 added to the 117,902 to equal 1.5 million, which leaves behind in the capital development, improvement, and acquisition an amount that I see as $3,799,356.
We were just off the
Yeah.
digit, just it's 3.
3 million.
There we go.
Yeah, okay, I was off one.
What was that number again, Jim?
$3,799,356.
57.
Would have been easier to just add 1.5 million to the 117.
I considered doing that, but I knew that somebody would object because we like round numbers and contingency funds.
So now we have a disagreement from behind, who says it should be a 5.7. I've got 3 5.6s.
Calculator with me.
Who got 5.6 down there?
I did.
All right.
She got a special calculator.
I saw your calculator up there, but it disappeared. Just want everybody to be happy. A dollar.
What's in a dollar? If we come up short, I'll kick it in.
Maybe donation.
But if you add
We want to be a team player, Jim.
117,
I got
last
5.6.
few numbers is gonna be
We have
6.
4. Sorry, you're being outvoted. Okay, he's gonna
I got
stand down.
356.
Oh, right.
He acquiesces.
So now we have approval of resolution on approving appropriations for fiscal year 2023-24. These typically we read them. Is it okay that I'm reading these? So be it resolved that the amounts below for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2023, for the purposes shown below in detail, are appropriated as follows for the general fund, totaling $14,234,951 in detail up above, and then capital development and improvement acquisition for 0, system development fund and $4,715,319, loan service $34,601, and our capital projects, no, our debt, excuse me, $1,371,725 for a total of $20,356,596. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Hallelujah.
Second.
First and second, do I, who's all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. That is all I have.
Nice job,
I'm
Chris.
speechless.
Nice
Thank you
job.
so much. If I could ask the
Yeah.
secretary
Moved it along.
to pause, because we do need to sign, and then you're all excused, meeting adjourned.
Who was this elected secretary?
Andrew Yang.
Andrew.
He was my vice.
Yeah, right.
Sign.
I'll bring my
Good,
pen.
I'm glad you have.
I will go get this redone real quick. And this page, you can go in and sign, but I'll show you this, which I'm gonna use that anyway. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Okay.